Good afternoon and welcome Between Two Ellens. We have two star-studded guests today. I'm very excited to join us Between Two Ellens. We have Representative and Minority Leader Cyndi Munson and Senator and oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm
minority leader too.
Yeah. It's like minority floor leader officially.
Officially. Yeah. Julia Kirt. And so just want to kick us off today as the leaders of the two best caucuses in the House. How are you preparing your caucus for this session?
Great question. Well, I feel so silly, but I just realized we're literally between two Ellens. I didn't think about that when we were sitting down. Anyway, thanks for having us, and this is really great, especially an all-women show. I love it. This year is kind of on a personal note. It's my last legislative session, so there's a lot swirling through my head and my heart as we're working through session now. But really, our focus as a caucus, as you two know, is really focusing on solving real problems for everyday people. And we have two new members, and so we've got people who have a lot of experience, like me. I'm outgoing. We have sort of middle of the road who have been here for a few years, and then these brand new members who have really brought a lot of energy and keeping us focused, I think, on what are people talking about across the state, and how do we stay focused on that, and not being so hard on ourselves. It's a difficult place to be. We know that. It feels like sometimes we have to work harder than anybody else in the building. And it's easy to get jaded sometimes, or think things can't happen because they never have or won't. And so this year I feel like, my job is really to balance that new energy with being realistic. And then also just the workload. We're also down two members.
Yeah, that's tough.
And there's work coming over from last legislative session for listeners and viewers who don't know. When we're in the second session of a regular legislature, work that was not completed in the first session, we continue to carry over. And so it's just a lot, and it's an election year. So we're going to have to battle all that. But I love our teamwork. I think we've done a good job utilizing everyone's skills and continuing to do that as we move forward. And I'm just so proud to represent our caucus and the work that we do.
Well, representing the upper chamber.
We
don't have any Ellens in our caucus, I'm sorry to say. I think what Leader Munson said is really important. I think for me, this is my second session as leader, and my second year as leader, because it's not only the first session. But last year we really spent a lot of time on just trying to work together on what are the shared goals we have. The challenge is we're all working our tails off. Like she said, covering a lot of territory. For us, that's 8 of us. We're covering every bill, every committee, every hearing, every topic, and trying to be thorough about that is really challenging. So simultaneously pushing things that we think are important. And so really trying to do a good job of maximizing the way we collaborate. And so last year it was a big focus for us was, what are we asking for? When I get the chance to negotiate something, what do we want to put forward? And try to make sure we're having that conversation. So it's not solely bill advancement, that we're making priorities, right? And so we made our priority issues to try to make sure that bills that are attached to those priorities are things we're pushing first. And that was a new way of operating for us. And I think also we're in a unique position because the Senate Republicans are very divided this year. There was a leadership election a couple years ago. Pro Tem Paxton's been very open about the fact that was a very close election. And so there's a lot of disagreement in the Republican caucus, which actually allows us to be in the conversation a lot. And so we knew we needed to be prepared. I mean, we've already this week had revenue and taxation bills where Senator Mann and I, who are both Democrats, are the ones that pass the bills. And so we are more in a position of driving the decision making. And so, but we have to be very prepared for that, because what I find is my Republican colleagues have been used to their bills passing easily. They're used to not having to whip their bills, and this is a different environment. And so a lot of times we're the ones that say, hey, wait a minute, are you going to need us for this? And then they have to reconsider. So it's almost like we have to be 2 or 3 steps ahead if we're going to be effective at negotiating. Because also, bipartisanship's hard. It's hard for everybody, but I think a lot of Republicans are facing heat in their districts about bipartisanship, about working with Democrats. And so it is easier if we have conversations in advance. If we're trying to have conversations on the floor, it's hard. So I guess my whole thing with our caucus has been plan everything we can plan. because there's a lot in this building you can't plan for, and a lot of variables that move all the time. So we were just like, what are those things we can plan? lots and lots of ask lists. What are our priorities? What would we ask for if we had a big chance to help with something? What would those be? And I think trying to pull all those variables together. And then I've just been really proud. We worked really hard last year on improving our external communications, making sure we're talking to communities more, putting out more press releases, putting out more editorials, having more communication in the building. So I'm really proud this year working with the House Democrats on our Capitol conversation. So not to go on and on, but my whole point is systems we started putting in place last year, I feel like are starting to bear fruit in terms of talking to people, in terms of hearing from people, in terms of knowing that we're seeking information, and that's paying off in terms of people communicating with us. So I think to me, it's improving those systems that we started putting in place last year. And being ready for anything.
Yeah.
That's right.
Pivot on the spot.
That's right.
Well, you said some things that I just love because, the way things work up here, it's you're on your own with your bill and you got to work together with your and it's all these different sorts of kind of things and steps that you have to take. Both of you had leadership before you came in. How is that different? Maybe some of those skills with you talking about working together and stuff. How is that? How does that look here?
I love that question. Because some of those skills that I had from my previous life kind of were put on a shelf for a while when I was not in leadership, I admit, because I worked for 20 years in the nonprofit arts community. So trying to elevate careers for visual artists, but I was very much involved with strategic planning and working with people across the state. So I've been what I would call horizontal leadership, where you're not somebody's boss. I've done tons of that kind of work, right? So I was not my board's boss. They were officially my boss, but I'm trying to ask them to help with things. And so I had a lot of experiences of that. And then I had a lot of experience of being underdogs. When I started working with artists, people would laugh, artists in Oklahoma, and they would laugh about it. And here we are 20 years later, people are taking public art seriously. They understand the value in our communities. And so I think that has prepared me to be here, because both working with people who I'm not their boss, the voters sent them here. We are family because the voters sent them here, right? And so I'm not anybody's boss. So how do we work together when we're not each other's boss? And the world really is used to a lot of hierarchical power. I mean, not to be cheesy, but I think, how do you move into a new way of governing? To me, we are doing that as leaders. And then also just being underdogs, because we're fewer, we don't always get taken seriously. That means we have to be more organized. That means we have to be more prepared. Most of the time, I'm not gonna complain about it. I'm just gonna say that means we gotta work harder. We gotta be in our game all the time,
All the time.
Yeah.
What did you lead?
Yeah, I think coming from the nonprofit world, which Leader Kirt and I share, is you're always under-resourced, understaffed. You never have everything that you need, so you have to be resourceful.
That's a good point.
And then in my work, I worked for the Girl Scouts of Western Oklahoma, and we're teaching girls inclusive leadership and getting away from that hierarchical model. And my way of leading is inclusivity. How can you look at everybody's skill sets, and how do we figure out where to plug folks in? And on top of that, some of the challenge that we face outside of not being anyone's boss, because that is very hard. You're not managing people. You really do have to lead. And I'm a big lead by example. I think showing up and doing your work, anything you're asking of someone else, you should be doing, and you should, in my opinion, and maybe I'm too hard on myself, is doing it 10 times more. But
10? Yeah, that's kind of harsh.
Yeah. We'll talk about that on another podcast.
Get a couch in here.
Well, my 40s were when I changed that.
Okay,
that
so
equation.
maybe I'll soften
I really
up
think it was
a little
my 40s
bit.
when I changed
I'll
that.
soften up a little bit.
My
soon.
perfectionism really got worked on in my 40s.
I did have a group of students earlier in high school. So I was much
50s
more
are the
self-righteous when I was in high
now.
school. So I've humbled myself, or I've been humbled quite a bit since then. But all that to say, being inclusive, utilizing strengths, and we're in a place where, like you said, we can't control everything. I think what another layer in terms of my experience is that as a younger member, now I've been here 10 years, the leaders before me, especially the male leaders, and it was a male-dominated caucus versus being a more female-dominated caucus like I lead now, very different dynamics, very different way of handling things. And so sort of readjusting, and I think women do look at politics as more of a teamwork. We are coalition builders. We try to figure out ways. You two are very good at figuring out partners on the other side of the aisle or across the chamber to figure out how to get things done. And so when I think about being a baby legislator, that's not always what was celebrated or taught.
Right.
And learning how to formulate your own voice at the Capitol when there aren't a lot of women here, that's a lot of what I've had to work through. And my master's degree is in leadership and education and development. And so I always think about like my way of textbook leadership or sort of as a discipline is so skewed compared to what goes on here. Because we call a lot of people leader or they're in leadership positions, and I'm not trying to be disparaging, but we all know this, that you can look at someone in a position and you think they don't really have the skill set to do what they're doing, but they're placed there because of politics. And that has always been a very difficult thing for me to reconcile in this world.
I'm glass half full, so I think there's an education moment.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Let
what
us
keeps
keep
me
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, like running good meetings was like one of my prides. I was a real facilitator because we worked with people all around the state. We were trying to get people to work with us. We were underdogs. So like I was big on every meeting being like maximized, being great for public input, being whatever it was, like making sure people felt engaged. And so like going to bad meetings to me is like fingers on a chalkboard. It's awful. And so that's been hard.
When I left OEA, the socks they gave me said, "I heart meetings," because I would have meetings with people every day if it was like, acceptable, but nobody wants to do that.
You heart into some I heart emails.
Do you heart all meetings or do you heart good meetings?
I heart good meetings.
Okay, I'm with you there.
But I think meetings lead to discussions you weren't anticipating and can lead to better outcomes. And so I struggle a lot of times in this dynamic that we don't have longer for real conversations.
I think it's in between the meetings
Yes.
where things really happen.
We need both those things.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true. Like, have you gone to
That's why we're
Oklahoma
so
Academy? Have you all
No,
gone to
I
Oklahoma
wanted-
Academy?
Yeah.
Okay, so like I thought legislating was going to be like Oklahoma Academy, which is like research-based, deep conversations about every question. I really imagined we were going to be up here like really digging into the issues with all stakeholders. No, that's not. Unfortunately, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
That's how what I thought too. I remember when I was new at the Girl Scouts, I just got out of graduate school. So yeah, you're like researching, writing, meeting, collaborating, and then you go into the workforce and even in the nonprofit world where you are doing a lot of those things, but you're working. And I had this I said this to one of my bosses in the like lunch area, and I was like, I thought we'd do more like talking about it and like planning, and they're like, oh, Cyndi, and poor Leader Inman, when he was leader, I mean, I would go to his office and be like, I thought we'd have more meetings, and these meetings last for like 5 seconds and no one's talking to each other.
But that's interesting because
like a different world.
But then as leaders, we get to create the conversations we want to have. And I mean, I watch you all doing that, but like for me as a caucus, part of my stepping into leadership in caucus was what are the conversations I wish our caucus was having? Getting to make that happen has been really enlivening. And when I don't make plans on like what would be valuable conversations, like we have meetings where I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I did not make that conversation that we should be having happen,
Yeah. It's just interesting. I think too, just again, going back to, I'm like watching you because I'm like, I'm on my way out and like, I'm not jaded and I'm not, there are different things.
I'm a baby leader.
Yeah, but it's interesting how much your experience ahead of time like really does shape how you, because you watch other leaders and you think, well, this is what I would do differently. Then you get into the position and you're like, oh, I had no idea what they were dealing with, But I often think back, again, we had a terrible budget situation. We had a teacher walkout. So leadership and how people were leading on both sides, quite frankly, looked very different. There were no conversations. Like, I'm not over exaggerating when I say that. The two parties were not talking to each other. And then we had more members. I was 30. We were 30 members. And it is, and so I think I'm the only one in the caucus who truly understands what it feels like to have that many and then to be where we're at now is very, very difficult. And so, what you're able to do is it's so fun to watch because in a good way, like doing things for people and showing what bipartisanship looks like, because we had a little more leverage because the Republicans were so split in the House around revenue and taxation. And so it gave us a little bit more power to negotiate for something better. Leader Inman and I actually were on a panel last week. And so he was doing like a little, going backwards. Yeah. And it was like, oh my gosh, all that time has gone by. And like, how did I get here? So it's very interesting, and again, I didn't have a lot of. We had a few women in the caucus, but they weren't really in positions where they could mentor you. They did mentor me, but you know what I'm saying? Like they weren't leading the caucus, and so it's very interesting. Just we could talk about this forever.
Yeah, no,
y'all came into a whole different caucus.
I know, but
I love
which I'm happy about too. Not that saying that I think that change is good.
Absolutely.
And if we would have stayed, we couldn't have stayed the caucus because we went 30.
Yeah.
And so you have to have different. And I think that that's sometimes the problem up here too, is that people don't quickly pivot or change. I'd love for you to tell a story maybe about some time when it was a real big pivot in your leadership, that it was something that you didn't know and the outcome, whatever that is. I know that because we were just talking about pivoting, like, you think that a meeting's going to happen and how it goes, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, I didn't know that was. Is there anything recent this session?
Gosh.
If it's too hard to think of.
I know, Mike.
I know.
A full-on pivot.
I know.
Like an example of how we pivot our energy?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this session, I
know you did it last session.
Not my first session. My first session, I didn't do this, but I do now file aspirational bills every year. So bills that I do not imagine are going to be heard, just given my political intent. I mean, we're not able to vet everything, as you all know. We can't vet everything in advance with committee or with our Republican counterparts, but I'm trying to guess, like, what could they deal with in terms of things that might not be too partisan or whatever. And I always file some things that are kind of just idealistic. And a couple of those are being heard this year, and that's a weird. So pivoting on that's really interesting. Like I had a bill this week, and you did too, that failed, that I knew was going to fail. I knew mine was going to fail when I walked in, and so it's a very interesting thing to go from, okay, this was just an aspirational thing to make a point about our decisions about revenue and our decision about taxes, to like having to make a case for it, and like, okay. Then I felt a little performative, and then it was like, okay, wait, like as a bill, it felt different than doing it with my colleagues and this inside the building versus what that conversation is outside the building. So I think those kinds of pivots are challenging.
Yeah, so it goes back to being prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. How about you?
I would say, I think just a pivot as a caucus, because I'm sort of referencing back on when times were a little bit difficult, and I think a little bit was a strategy where. Where we had some power to kill things and negotiate and move things forward versus filing our own legislation in a way that was like, as a caucus, these are the things we're going to prioritize. And so, and I think some of it has to do with the dynamics and the makeup of the caucus. Because we are female or women, predominantly women, we are planners, we're collaborators, we want to get things done. Being in the minority and the super minority, you also have to readjust what success looks like. For some, it is how many things can we kill, how many things can we beat them up on. And as I became leader, that goal shifted big time. It was more about what can we get done, how many bills can we move forward. Like when I was a freshman legislator, we were not counting how many bills we got across the finish line, how many bills we got signed into law. Now, I personally was doing that. And I appreciate that. I'm glad that, because I think you're more impactful when you're actually a part of the conversations and having the difficult conversations. Now, we may not always land in the same place. We may not always agree, not just with the Republicans, but as a caucus. But I think being a key part of these conversations, like for you with disability services, and people lean on you on the other side with education, nonprofit work, I think that makes us more powerful in a different way. And I think it challenges me as a leader in a different way than those who came before me, because you have to have this balance of, because our job as the opposing party or the minority is to hold them accountable. And so we have to call them out on things that they're not doing. And you have to balance that with,
it's a tough balance. Very tough balance.
How do you do that while making sure it doesn't cost your caucus? But it's also our role. We are the leaders to speak up on what's not happening in this building, or what is that is not right for Oklahomans.
Yeah. I mean, that's anyone who thinks that's an easy decision has never experienced it. Like the personal relationships that you're trying to build to actually improve. I mean, the things that we could pass could improve lives, could change lives for the better, could improve our state for the better, or could reduce harm. And that balance every day is so hard. And like, I mean, I was thinking about the other day, I voted for a bill that I, in theory, I'm like, I really should have voted no. But then it also was like, it was relational and this and that. And like, I think people think, oh, that's political. Well, yeah, it is, because we actually what makes an impact? Me having the lone no vote versus me being able to stay in communication with that person to improve that bill. And I think that scenario is constantly challenging. It's very hard to describe because we're all having to try to navigate it on the fly. Some of it's based on hunches.
Yeah.
Like I do, however, think we make a decision to show up. Like I tell my constituents, like I am not here to be a protester, right? I am glad.
That's not your job.
Right. I'm very glad for advocates. I'm very glad for protesters. I think they are incredibly important to pushing things. I don't think I was elected to do that. So it's very hard. That balance is hard because sometimes people think we're not doing enough on a specific topic. And I really think some of my constituents want me to go lay in front of my Republican colleagues' doors and stop business. And I just don't see that as what our community needs from their elected officials. And so, but we all decide that. We all have to decide that. Yeah. And we have to decide it based on our constituents and our own integrity and understanding of, you know what I mean? Like, but I struggle with it.
It's a roller coaster. I tell anyone it's a roller coaster
that
for
this
sure.
is a flippant decision.
Yeah.
Like that's the big thing I try to tell people. This is not a flippant decision to decide what to work on or what to stand up for. It's hard.
Yeah,
It
very
is
hard.
Yeah.
We're doing our best.
At a local level or more local than the national level, like relationships are really important. We see each other every day. We could bump into each other somewhere, you know, in terms of our colleagues. And so those relationships and figuring out how to build those, especially in difficult times, when difficult moments come up, you know, people don't see that side of the work. And I can be very upset and angry at somebody for what they're doing to people, but and that was a lesson I had to learn very quickly being here, and we all have to learn, is I'm really frustrated with you on this issue, but on this issue, we're co-authoring a piece of legislation,
100%.
you know? And so, you know, because I've always
It takes a
struggled
lot
with
of
that too,
discipline
but
to
you've
not
got
to be able to compartmentalize
Yes.
that.
Yes.
But I think for us to be effective up here, and especially in such small numbers, we have to.
Yeah.
We have to.
I wish there were more efforts, though, to just in terms of our systems as a chamber, that there were more official spots for the minority caucus.
That's a good point.
At one point, there were ranking members. At one point, there was a spot for, you know, a member of the minority party, whether they're Republican or Democrat, where they had a little bit more weight. You know, it's not just you're a member of a committee. It's
I would
That's a
love it
great
if the
point.
chair was a Republican and the vice chair was that
Yeah.
was the majority and the vice chair was. I think doesn't Texas do that or something? But
They made a
not
deal
sure,
for
but
that.
yeah.
Alaska has that.
And I
when
mean,
you're a
think
little
that's-
closer, and I mean that's the
You don't
That's
like
when you have
that
to have,
idea?
no, you have to have more numbers to do that.
well, you
Yeah.
do. I just like. I mean, that would be how working together looks like. Because right now, you know, you step aside. I can't believe you talked to, you know, the other side, and I go, well, I have to. We're only 20.
We don't have a choice.
Now we're 18.
18,
you know, so we only have. So if I have a bill, I've got to. I have to work with them. It doesn't happen in a silo. Plus, I think sometimes people don't know sometimes things that are missed or overlooked, and a lot of times it doesn't give them a lot of heartburn. The problem is it's so hard. And it should be hard to get legislation
But
passed.
it's a lot to get things through.
for everybody.
Yeah.
For everybody, it should. But because I love it when people say, I don't like this or that, and you work on it. Love everything about that. I'm for your deal. I hear that I'm for your deal, but I don't like this. All right, let's go talk about it. That's not me giving up. It's that I didn't see that side.
Yeah, it's back to the preparedness. And sometimes I do think, you know, when we go in as the minority, you know, one of our roles is to ask questions in committees. But sometimes, you know, I go back and forth of should I tell that committee member beforehand or not, you know, and
We try to do. It depends on those relationships.
and it depends on that relationship and the respect and if they came to me, if they didn't, you know, but
we also don't have that much time.
we don't have much time. So it's all very complicated in
when
a
I
moment.
wasn't in leadership, I did more of that.
Yeah.
But now it's like, I'm like, oh, wait, oh gosh, the meeting's now.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, so
or
you
you
have
get
time.
pulled into something else that you
Right.
didn't plan for.
But you can, I mean, you know, the role of the lobbyist, if there's a lobbyist on a bill, I do now say, like, I'm going to ask questions. And at least, depending on the person.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I do think that leads, if we make our colleagues defensive, it's not constructive.
Yeah.
It's not. If they can, but I love, so right now, and I'm not blowing smoke because he's not sitting by me, but the Pro Tem Paxton truly likes questions and is actually open to critical questions. And I'll say, I mean, I would say it to his face, Pro Tem Treat was not that kind of person.
Yeah.
He viewed that as a threat, and he was prepared. The interesting thing was he was very prepared. It wasn't like he wasn't ready, but like he did not like those questions. And so it's kind of interesting to have that modeled by the top leader in the Senate, that it's okay for us to have questions. And minority party has an important voice here. I mean, I see that playing out with more members, seeing that and being like, oh no, this is great. We need the minority party to ask these questions. And I'm like,
it's
let's
good
not be scared of that.
Yeah, it's good for the process to have the dialogue. And in some ways, because I think being in the majority or super majority, it's easy to become complacent too. Because like you said, if they don't whip their votes, if they don't, we're expected to do these things, And actually, I talked to Representative Tammy West yesterday, and then she was coming to my office a little bit ago. She is a majority leader. She has been here just as long as I have, and she still works her bills like she's
very thorough.
There is no one like her on the other side, and I told her I appreciate it that you respect my vote and earning my vote. And even yesterday, there was a tough bill in A and B, or JCAB, and at first I was like, well, I'm not going to vote for it, but I don't. But then as the conversations were going on, because questions were being asked in the committee, I was like, okay, whoops, slow it down. I do have a few questions. And we can do it respectfully, and it's good for the process. It's good for others to hear what's going on, because honestly, if we were not in those committee meetings, no questions would be asked. And that's not transparent. That's not the democratic process. So. Or legislative process.
So what do you think, moving into this session, what do you think the top issues are going to be as we work through the session?
Unfortunately, property tax cuts. I mean, I think that's come from, I would contend, aging advocates, seniors, I understand they're facing huge rising costs, and that's a challenge. I just really want us to focus on things that go towards corporate profits instead of things that go towards our public schools. But I think property tax cuts is coming from the Republican primary electorate, sounds like, and I feel like we're compromising to that position before we've even really looked at the impacts.
Which is problematic. I think we all can agree education, specifically literacy, and I think I think they're getting a lot of pressure from the state chamber and chambers, because it is getting more and more difficult to recruit, and as we know in the last few weeks, retain businesses in Oklahoma. I think we're all in agreement. We need to improve literacy. We need to improve math, all outcomes for our children. But how are we doing this thoughtfully with as many experts in the room around the table helping with this, and getting us to a place where we're not going back and forth on retention rates or, and then do we have the resources to actually implement these programs that help our students? And right now it feels very one-sided. It does not feel like we're really having a robust conversation around how we improve education. And I wish, of course, I think this is probably all of our wishes, but if we could just focus on like 5 things and push those things forward, that never happens. But I think if we don't get education right, we're not going to get to this place where we strengthen our economy, and all of these affordability issues that we're talking about, that we hear from our constituents that we live every single day, will not improve until we get higher wages for folks, and education's the first place.
Just going to throw it in. You have to do that and early intervention.
Yes.
We will not
right.
be having
Absolutely.
the 3rd grade problem if
You are correct.
If we caught them early.
100%.
And I think that there's a go slow. I said the other, go slow to go fast.
Yeah.
This is something that is not going to, it's too big for one session.
Yes.
And I think back to the,
right.
Pogue Miller helped lead this conversation about the Oklahoma's commitment. So how do we make sure these things are things we're committing to for long term? We cannot reconfigure constantly.
Exactly.
I mean, literally my kid had a different reading sufficiency act every year from pre-K to 3rd grade.
Exactly.
We're about to do another graduation requirement. So our kids, Kirt and our kids who are in 9th grade got new graduation requirements, and now we have another bill this week, which my 7th grader will have new graduation requirements.
We need to make longer term decisions.
Yes.
These have to be plans that stick in place, because the amount of change in my kid's lifespan as a senior, what he experienced over the last 14, 15 years, because he was retained on purpose by parental decision. We've got to look at it longer term.
I'm systems change, I'm systems change.
Totally.
Every agency, 19 clickety-clack, we do things, and I kind of just want to modernize all of that too.
Totally.
But I keep thinking, if we don't, we just have to have bigger plans. And even if you don't like if I don't like what you're going to say about it, I want you there. Because that way, I think that's maybe the thing we're missing up here with that. I wish that before the budget is completed, that we would know about it before.
Absolutely. I think some Republicans would like that
Can we
too,
just
I agree.
point out that budget transparency is gone
Yes,
this year
it
again?
is.
All the efforts towards improving transparency in the budget process, almost all of it's gone. There's still a website.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
there's a
we're not having the
forward-facing.
hearings. We're not having the conversations that we were having for a couple of years. So
and
we're
it-
improving some of that.
Yeah, and looking at just again, I know I feel like I'm like the old, but 10 years ago, this is exactly what was happening, and I think every time we get in a crunch as a state, this is what the budget leaders do. They sort of like go back and I don't want to say hiding, but they like bring it back
No.
in.
Well, I was going to
versus-
say it's actually protecting their members, and that's one of the reasons we have to hold them accountable
Yeah.
for it, because I think when there's bad decisions being made, it all gets put on the budget chairman and leadership, because individual members can say, well, that happened in the budget agreement. Whereas when they're gifting money or adding money,
Everybody
they all
gets to
want credit
celebrate.
for it. So to me, I think we have to call them out if they're not in that
I
conversation.
agree. And I want to pull back in education on this because, there's these efforts like we're talking about without long-term plans and deeper conversations, but there are all these needs right now in public schools that we're not addressing. And it's like, can we address those? And then maybe we'll fix some of this, but
And we
it's-
don't have a lot of money to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we're in a very
We've made
challenging
the
budget
choice
year.
not to have the money.
Yes.
And I keep trying to, Farm Bureau, that's
Yes,
what I
you
was
did
trying to
great
bring up, which
yesterday.
was
You did a
just
great
like,
job yesterday.
I just
These are
said,
choices.
because I don't want to act like the budget happened to us. They chose to cut taxes last year
Yes.
and the year before that and the year before that. So when you say, oh, it's going to be a tough budget year, they made it a tough budget year.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't want people to forget the connection between those dots.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
Gosh, we could go
This
on
is
and talk
great.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
could. Yeah, we could. Yeah, we
talk
could.
and talk because I think it's good that we, like, if anyone's watching this, I do want people to know that it's not easy. It's a little bit difficult, but gosh, when we work together,
Yeah.
I mean, I get chills.
We're
just
not
thinking
complaining.
about it.
We're not complaining.
No, we're not complaining
No.
because I mean, hard days. I told people out in the hallway at ALS, and they had set up a meeting with me. There's all these great people there, and there were a few people that did have ALS in their family. That was their wives, especially. And so I said, are you coming to me because you know about my story? And they go, what's your story? And immediately I just started to cry because their pride. They were like, this is how we get changes. Someone knows. And I go,
Yes.
I hate to tell you this, but they don't give me those decisions with the checkbook.
Yeah, right,
I'll
right.
take the big check and
Right.
write it.
Absolutely.
I'm very empathetic.
But I also know that we can't leave out caregivers,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it affects other parts of our budget. That's why the planning's good.
Yeah.
But I just want to bring it up that it's not just this. We all work together, and then I talked to someone who is part of the budget team, and we were talking about ALS, and he goes, "Yeah, we're listening." And I go, "Please." So I'm hoping that some of that, is I'm happy. I'm really happy ears on that because I'm hoping that people will listen to the advocates that come up here and then tell us their stories. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Well,
Do we get to ask you a question?
We're at the end, and so this is where you each get to ask a question to the Ellens.
I've got a good one.
Okay.
Unless you're ready.
No, you
Okay.
go.
Okay.
I'm like,
What is the scariest thing you've ever done
ooh.
Oh, just in life?
in life?
Oh.
Scariest. Like,
gosh, I'm gonna need a beat on that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of scary now.
Good one.
do we answer our own questions too, or do we
Yeah,
just?
I mean, I love it. You can.
If you
No, I
just
don't-
go ahead and start it because I can't think of.
I mean, there's
the
probably other things, but one that I think is really fascinating is when I was in my mid-20s, I had a friend whose husband did security for St. Anthony's. Oh, I shouldn't name the hospital.
Yeah.
For a hospital. Although it was forever ago. So.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to test their systems for baby stealing.
No.
And so I went. He said I was like the profile, like white woman in your late 20s.
Wait, you had to
I
go
was the
try
profile.
do it?
Yeah. So he wanted me to go.
Oh my
and see.
God.
my God.
That is
Yeah,
hilarious.
It was scary. It was so scary. I'm almost sweating thinking about it. This was like 20 years ago. But so I went and I went through the maternity ward to see if I could get in there. I took scrubs one
my
day.
gosh.
I went back the next day and they wanted to see what would their people do the right protocols. And then they had arranged with a mom for me to pretend that I had a baby in my duffel bag, and I exited the building. My duffel bag, and they called a code. They called a code on it, and anyway, it's like the scariest thing I've ever done. And this law enforcement guy who was coming to get me was like, on the ground. And I was
Oh
just
my
like,
God.
Anyway,
Did you get paid?
So that was scary. No, it was because he was my friend. And like,
Oh my gosh. No.
but looking back, I'm like, I can't believe it.
That's totally not legal anymore. We know this, right?
Yeah.
Like,
It's not legal.
You would have to like sign documents now
Probably.
to be able to do
Yeah,
it.
he probably needed some
Yeah.
waivers. Maybe I signed waivers. I don't know. I didn't care in my 20s.
Yeah.
Making waivers.
You're like, I'm invincible.
funny.
That's the scariest like single thing. I mean, you could talk about
Wow.
parenting or running, for
yeah,
whatever.
all of
Anyway,
those
so what are you
things.
guys thinking?
God, I don't know.
You come to anything?
Ooh,
I
kind
don't
of
have anything that exciting.
scary.
Scary, daring, two different things.
This wasn't like, I don't know. It was like one of the times I was most nervous, which is really silly. Do y'all remember TRL? It was
Yes.
Total Request Live on
Yes.
MTV. They came to St. Louis, Missouri, and they were picking the next VJ. And we drove up. We got there at 3 a.m. to try out to become the next VJ. And
How old were you?
I was in 9th grade. Yes. Or not 9th grade. I was a freshman in college.
Okay, nice.
And so we drove over, and I remember being so nervous as if I thought I was going to be selected for this thing. You know, like this was my real chance to break through. And I remember they said, "What's your favorite band?" And again, if anybody remembers, MTV is like, you know, pop, rock. And I was like, Dixie Chicks.
Yeah. Nice.
Brr, brr.
Paris, Texas.
I love you were nervous
And
that you thought you were going to get picked. That's
So, I mean, I wanted to. I was really
Yes.
passionate about, you know, this opportunity. And I remember like just being so, anyway, it was a very nerve-wracking thing that I had high hopes for that didn't go anywhere.
Okay.
So
No, I still.
You could go somewhere totally different.
yeah,
with
that's
that.
why, yeah, you can go somewhere different.
Scariest thing. I mean, stuff that I did that I shouldn't. Scary because you
Yeah.
could get caught. No, I'm not going to tell that story.
Yeah.
Scary thing. I mean, if I can think recently, I mean, truly, there's been so much, you know, that. But it's not scary as much as I didn't know if I could do it. Is living alone.
I was about to say that. That is
Right.
Living alone.
Totally, that's a
is,
huge change.
It's very. I did something this when as soon as William left. I was preparing myself. Of course, no one would ever see it in me.
Yeah.
You know, because that's probably part of, you know, it's going to affect my health, I know. But to have, as soon as he left, I packed every weekend with something. It's why I did Leadership Oklahoma. It's why, I mean, you know, Chelsea.
Your time was full.
Full. And then when I finally got to have a tiny, every weekend I was traveling. Every week I was doing something. And there was a first week, it was probably 9 weeks out, that I had a weekend by myself. I loved it. And I didn't, you know, I wasn't scared, but I had such anticipatory anxiety about it. It was maybe not even anxiety. I was aware of the unknown, and I didn't know how I would feel.
And then you loved it.
And now I like it. So when they come home, it's like, go away. But it's very different to do it all by yourself.
Yes.
Well,
It's so interesting that you said that because I'm listening. Well, first I'm listening to you and I'm
This
like, I
one's
have
like, that's scary.
story like
I
that.
know.
And then I'm thinking, did I, anyway, but I was thinking, okay, something recent that you like didn't want to do and living alone, but different life stages. Like I don't have children. I'm not married. I was in a relationship. So I think back and it's like you live with your parents and I was in college. I lived in the sorority house. And I love living in the sorority house because like everybody's together.
Same.
And then I had roommates and all that. And then I was in a relationship that I thought would be long term and was not a good situation. And my biggest fear and why I didn't get out of that relationship quicker is because I was so afraid to live by myself. I'd never done it.
you said no.
And then when this was in 2019, not to get too personal, but the point I'm trying to make is it was 2019, June, and then COVID happens in 2020. So not only am
You
I
really
living
got a lot of
alone,
time
I was
off.
like, it was like, you don't get to go anywhere. You don't get to do the things like
Yeah.
you said, like you try to figure out how do you like manage all this and fill up your time as much as you can. And there was no option for that. But I think it was really good for me as an extrovert, as somebody who likes to be around people. It really taught me I do need my alone time. And I can do this. And it is very hard. And I think right now, just honestly, the scariest time of day for me is getting home after a long day of doing so much with people. Winding down is really difficult. I'm a morning gal. I'm up by 4:30. I like to get going. But nighttime is very hard for me. And sometimes can be scary. Not to like bring it down or anything, but
okay. No, but
I think people don't realize,
No,
and not having a support person at home is
that you always knew, like since I was 20. I've always had someone in the house.
Yeah.
And I remember when they were all, oh, William's going to go, well, you need a dog. And I go, okay, I don't need another living thing. I want to see if I can do it by myself, you know.
Yeah.
But there was necessary apprehension about it because since I was 20.
Yeah, that's wild.
And then
I'm old now.
I think
so.
the reality too for us, I mean, really for all of us, but women and in politics and just kind of where we are, our environment, it can be a little scary. But I'm also like, that doesn't mean I want to live in my house.
Yeah.
Like, I like the quiet. I like coming home and everything is exactly where I left it. And honestly, the strength of being able to, you know, take care of yourself.
I was afraid of being lonely, but I'm just alone.
Yeah.
And
That's
there's
awesome.
huge
That's
difference.
a huge difference.
I thought you were going to ask a question
great-
about the Enneagram or something, so I'm happy. She's always telling me my number. So what was yours?
I'm like, ooh, let's go into that. I was thinking about what you do to, like, though I don't have a good answer for this, but like, great answer. How do you take care of your, like, how do you prepare for the day? Like, what's the thing you must get done every morning before you come here?
I walk and run with a walking group and a running group of women that I, you know, get all my
Every day?
Monday through Friday.
Wow.
Yeah, and so Ellen Pogmiller at 5:45 in the morning is here. You all are seeing, you know, a calm down version.
I love that.
I honestly, I could not. I am so extroverted, and I am someone who really loves having conversations and talking about feelings all day, that if I didn't get some of that out in the morning, I would overwhelm people with my energy. So that is my thing.
That's my favorite thing about you. Like, petite, but so energetic. Lots of energy in here, yes.
I guess for me, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out my routine because it was always, you know, taking care of someone. I still, you know, get phone calls in the morning and stuff. But I'm trying to figure what that is. You know, I used to walk every morning when they were around, you know, I had a huge system. Now I'm kind of systemless and I'm still trying to figure it out. It's only, I don't know. I don't know what gets me started, but I guess the news, I'm always start with the news. But yeah, I'd love to get back to that thing I have to do.
Yeah.
I'd say it's a cup of coffee, but I don't even drink coffee as much anymore. I know.
Wow.
I'm telling you, it's a big
You upended everything.
I know. Oh, yes, I did. Well, we are so happy to have you guys on. This is such a great,
Wonderful.
comfortable conversation, and I hope that, you know, everyone sees that we could talk about there's layers to this, but I know that I'm very happy that you're my senator and friend. And definitely, Leader Munson, you're doing a great job, and we're both very happy. But thank you so much for sharing with us all these things that we have to have people remember about working together. Yes. I think it's a good thing.
Yes.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks for being with us.
Thanks.